Here we have Robert's Sun Mustang, all the way from the Indian factory in the late 80s, mid to late 80s, sometime around about then. And basically, really likable guitars, but sort of challenging because they're what I call like a 98% scale strat, meaning they've got a nice thick body. I think there's room in there for a fairly big block. The neck is really nice. It's got a vintage sort of feel to it. The maple's always nice. Tuners are usually cheap. The rosewood is usually quite nice. A bit dirty here. The nut is a pain in the ass. I'll come back to that. The distinctive Sun Mustang headstock, which it shares with the Encore Strat. I don't think they actually call them Strats, but the Encore guitars came out of the factory, same factory at the same time, and the neck was identical practically, apart from the logo. The body on the Encores was the same colour, were the same colours, but they were thinner, slightly thinner bodies. This one's a bit battered. It's taken a few knocks, so there's no sort of cleaning it up really. But they have the potential to play really well, and they all came with pretty hefty frets as well, which means when you get them to this age, there's a little bit of wear and they'll need some leveling and sorting out. But generally speaking, they'll come good without expressly needing a refret. So we should be able to get a good fret level out of there without too much problem. We have the sort of scratch plate, which isn't really sitting on or anything, so that's going to come right off, and I'm going to make it my business to rewire that, fit new pots, new switch and so on, because none of it really works at the moment. There's a bit of sound coming out, but it isn't related. The pot doesn't seem to do anything. These pots don't work, so they've got to come out and just go ahead and replace. There's no point trying to fix. All of these screws are knackered, so I'm going to replace with as many newish looking items as possible just to make sure these things work. What I don't know from Robert just yet is how he wants this bridge set up. It can go floating, and if the nut's right, it will float. The arms come down with it, so it has the potential to float. That's if it will go in. It may be pretty stiff right now. Yeah. Pinging up through that horrible plastic nut. Now, the problem with these guitars is you can spend money trying to fix them up, but the constraints are kind of straightforward. The first one is that it's really all around the bridge. The bridge is a 50mm E to E spacing. That is done because it matches with 50mm or close to spacing on these pickup poles, and it comes to a narrow neck heel, which is about 54, which is narrower, as you know, than many modern guitars. It comes all the way up here to what looks like a Fendery headstock, except it's shorter, so that if you buy single individual pickups to replace these, the sort of individual units, standard looking thing, I don't know, something like those, you know, the Grover style, or even something like those, whatever that one is, then you can replace them. But if you go for a set of vintage Clouson, the ones that are in a line with the screws either side of them, you end up with one of them hanging off the end here, and you can often spot that when people have done that upgrade and they got caught out with the last tuner hanging over the edge. So it just goes to show it's a little shorter than a Strat, but I really like them. I've pulled out these. There were just some screws in there without any Strat buttons, so they were knackered. Yeah, so they're hard to upgrade. So what I'm planning to do with this is to concentrate on the neck work, keeping the original pickups but rewiring and everything and putting some shielding in, tidying up the bridge and making this thing work the best it can. But even though they're cheap, these tuners will work perfectly well. That won't be good. We'll get rid of that horrible thing because that will be squeaking on the strings. This is the biggest problem of all. Sun people, under license from Fender, basically made a non-standard nut. There is no other nut in the world this width, from front to back width, or thickness, front to back. It's about 3.8, so nothing will just drop in there. and if I'm going to do a Tusq replacement, then I have to use a block and custom make a nut from scratch, which is a real pain because it will take forever to do, and we only get one shot at it, and if I get it wrong, that's 12 quid of Tusq down the drain and I have to buy another one. But I do have a block over here ready and waiting for it. Okay, so the first part of the game really, I mean, we could do it a number of ways round, but in a way, probably the best thing to do, we could remove this. The strings are a bit old and crappy, and I'm slightly worried that they'll break, and therefore if they break, their value as sacrificial strings will disappear. So I'm thinking while they're still on, we might be advised to do the basic setup first, or the basic fret leveling first. A bit of, I think these are 10s on here. I'll just double check. It's actually quite warm in here at the moment. Actually, I'm kind of a little bit boiled. Mind you, I've been doing lots of sanding, cutting and things, so I've probably been working up a bit of a sweat. That comes as a, what's this, 40, 44, 9's 42. I think that is more of a 42. That is a 44, but it might be a hybrid or some strange combo. But the top E is definitely, I would say that's 9. It's not entirely possible to be certain, but so what I would do typically with this is I would start by setting this to its target action. But the first thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to screw the jack claw, the claw screws in, jack, you know what I mean, the bridge claw screws in. Just want to sort of hard tail or pull the tremolo block onto the deck and keep it there. Now it should be there providing it's not over tightened at the front, which it may well be. So if it is over tightened at the front, I think the thing we probably need to do to begin with is just to back these off a fraction. Now they are pretty rusty, so I think we're going to have to be quite careful of these. I've got a spare set over on the shelf which I was going to see if I could replace, but it's slightly iffy replacing tremolo block screws because they only have to be a slight bit out and they mess up. They can mess up how your tremolo operates. Okay, we're on the deck. That's what I wanted. Yeah, this nut is going to go. Probably have to be sawn out. Right now it's a good height, or a good low height. So what I can do is I can get the little hex key thing, and we can basically set the action as if we were putting it as we wanted it to play. Problem with these damn things is that the truss rod adjustment is down in the heel. Now let me just start by seeing what we've got in curvature. Well, it's okay. I'm going to call that workable for the purposes of setting up, but we'll double check it again when everything's off. Now the other thing I can tell you right now is that the strings are misaligned. I don't know how well you can see that if we get overhead. Got too much room here and not enough here, so we're in danger of slipping off. So we'll need to realign that when the time comes. But in the short term, while we're in sort of mucky strings mode, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the playing action down. Oh god, it's very rusty. This is the challenge. So I might want to use a different hex key, but it's probably a little less worn than the other one. I want to get these down. They may break. Wow, they are proper, oh hellfire, rusted. We could be in trouble with these. If we can't move them, we're sort of stuck with these saddles because they're 10 millimeters wide, and there aren't any others. So if these actually do get completely seized in place, we'll struggle to find anything of that spacing anywhere else. So we've got to at least be able to get these out, if only to replace them. So just right now, I don't mind the grub screws. I can replace those. I could do some spraying of some screw undoer stuff. It's coming in at just over 0.5 of a mil, which is where, sorry, 1.5 of a mil. 1.5 mils. I think they're just about working. So I'm going to set as close as I can playing action, and the reason for that is I just want to level the frets whilst challenging the playability. So it's good to start as low as possible, and then we'll make it work from there. Wow, talk about rusted. Anyway, so I'm just going to get these down to, we ideally want about 1.2 on the high E, 1.5 on the low E, but with a old guitar like this it might need to be a tiny bit higher. It's hard to tell until we get going. That's good. A bit lower. So, sorry, I won't be able to see much of any goodness there. So basically, the guitar that we grew up, the guitars we grew up playing, that we bought second hand or even new from people's mums' catalogues in my case, but most of my playing time, the action I had on the guitar was pretty much dictated by what the frets would allow, and I think that might be quite a common experience in that we play the thing, lower it, find it buzzed, and then stop and just get on and play it. So we were sort of dictated to by the condition of the frets underneath. Now, what I nowadays do, since I started doing this work, is I tend to set the playing action that I want and make the frets comply with that, which is a sort of very different position from how I had it as a kid. Anyway, so but it means that when we set the action that we want, the first thing we tend to find is that we get buzzes because it's too low, or it's so low, relatively low, that basically the strings are encountering the effects of the uneven frets. Okay, that's hitting the pickups a minute, so let's get those quickly out of the way if we can. It's partly because this, for now, it's because this plate is actually sticking up in the way, which isn't helping. But if we just can move them for the time being, just so that they'll actually let the note ring out. Okay, it's got some fret slap and a little bit of fret buzz, so it'll be good to level it, not least to get rid of the wear that's already on here, so as well as curing that fret slap so it plays more cleanly. Better. So it'll be good to do. We'll get the frets leveled and then move on from there. It's quite difficult to do this with rusted, gummed up grub screws. As long as we can just do this for the time being, then we can get rid of those. I've got some replacements I can fit. Okay, a tiny bit more over here. Okay, I think that will do me for an action. Okay, well, some of the strings up here, like the low E and the A, are too high over the first fret, but again, they won't get in the way of us doing the fret leveling. So at this point, what I would do is I would take you down here, and I would basically start by marking the frets up. Now I can see that there's a bit of wear, and I can see there's some flattening as well, so it may be that these frets have been leveled in the past. It's not, it may just be that they're worn down from use, but we'll start out by just, it doesn't really matter if they have or if they haven't, we'll just go for it, and this will give it a fresh new set of frets by the end of it, or what will feel like new frets. I think it has been leveled, judging by the scratching on the top of the frets. It probably has been leveled in the past, which is why it's not choking out on bends actually, which is quite good. Which is, and it's unusual. Most of the Sun Mustangs I've had would choke out on bends when I put them down to the target action, and this one hasn't, so it does suggest it's been done before. And it's a good sign too, because it means it's been a much loved and enjoyed guitar. Okay, so there we have the frets covered up. Now let's put you down here, at which point I have to utilize the view from the mirror to see what the heck's going on. Now this kit, my leveling kit, I've had it at home just now because I've been leveling a bass, well, more to the point, I've been leveling a fretless bass neck at home, which sounds bizarre, and it is a bit, because how do you level, oh shit, I'm just taking the thing off my thing. How do you level a fretless neck, a neck with no frets? And that's because I've discovered that it needs it because it's uneven. Whether it's got frets on it or not, the neck is still undulating in the same way as these necks do, and even without the frets, the fingerboard appears to be getting in the way of the strings, which, because it's fretless, are by definition lower. They have less clearance anyway than a standard fretted guitar would have. So I'm going to whiz on through and get this leveling done, and this is dirty to begin with, so I haven't done any cleaning. I'm just concentrating on making more mess right now to begin with, and the aim of this is to level the frets with this tunable curved leveling beam, and just discover what it's telling me about the condition of the neck. Well, like always, cutting, not, cutting, not, cutting, not, cutting right on the end. So we've got, again, high, low, high, low, high, low, high. So we've got, again, 3 or 4 completely distinct areas on this neck, which is so common now that I'm finding, and that's what the first little bit of leveling tells me straight from the off. Now a bit more leveling will tell me kind of how much the low spots are compared to the high spots. Beginning to touch that one, not touching that one at all, so that's very low. Not touching that one, not touching these 3. So there are a couple of individually now very low frets, relative, actually, let's call it that one and that one. One there, and 3 here. And the rest are getting cut by the leveling beam. So the beauty of this is you don't have to get it all leveled out precisely so that everything's cut. You just need it to level out until the action we've chosen plays cleanly. So I can live with these frets that aren't currently cutting as long as they play at this action that I've set. And they do. So I'm going to not worry about the fact that 3 of them here, 2 of them there, and 1 of them there is still low. We can afford it to be low because it's beneath the level of the action that I've set, which is very low, so that's not a problem. I'm also at this point looking to see how much of the fret wear am I able to take off at the same time to clean up the grooved frets, and I tend to only care about removing those grooves as a sort of byproduct of fret leveling, in order to, the primary objective is to get the playing action the way I want it. That low fret there makes the next one high. Tiny bit there. Yeah, so I don't care about unevenness that is below my target action radar, if you like. I just need it to play well at the action I've chosen. Okay, so having done the E and the B track, now I'm going to recalibrate for the G. I'm sort of moving along swiftly because there's quite a lot to do on this guitar, when you take into consideration the rewiring as well as the shielding and so on. There's quite a lot. Okay, so as I recalibrate, I'm just checking to make sure that the curve on this is right, and it changes as you go across the radius of the neck from one side to the other. So I just alleviated the curvature, or relieved the curvature a little bit, because it was a little bit too curved. It doesn't do any major harm, it's just a little bit more precise if you get it exactly the same as the neck that you're aiming to level. And I'm sort of trying to keep any pressure of pushing in the middle, so that the curvature of this rod is extends all the way across and it isn't distorted in one area or the other. That's pretty good. That's an action down here of 1.2 millimeters on the high E, so it's very low action for a Strat. These are quite flat radius anyway, I can't remember, they're not vintage type radius, so that does help to allow you to get a buzz-free playing action. But it's still good. Now the bass strings are the ones that usually have most of what I call the fret slap, which is not individually high frets or low frets. Fret slap is usually caused by clusters of frets across the whole length of the neck standing up. So imagine it as a series of hills and valleys one after another, and the fret slap tends to happen when a hill of higher frets is somewhere in front of the valley of lower frets, and so they get in the way, the higher frets get in the way. A little tiny bit around the 12th fret and thereabouts. So this is where I do start to change a little bit of the pressure I put on. So for example, around the 12th fret, and I probably now just push down a little bit around here. Just want to sort of focus the action of the rod a little bit more on this end. Very, very non-scientific. Focus the effect of the rod. That's what I call it. It's just I press down a little bit more there. Does that have the effect of distorting the rod's shape overall? Yes, a tiny bit. Does that turn out to be a problem? No, not in my experience. This is the sort of experience-based part of it. When you get to know how you work with it, this is where you sort of hard to explain why you make this choice to stop or to press a little harder here and not there, but it's how it works really. So yeah, the most time-consuming part of the setup probably will be making the custom nut. It's worth doing because with a custom Tusq nut, So there's a low one there. We know that fret's low, and that's why playing this here, because that one's relatively high. So I need to put a bit of attention here and a bit up here too on this A. Yeah, so getting a good Tusq nut will make this guitar stay in tune, which is great, or help it to stay in tune, which there's no reason why it won't. There's nothing about this guitar that should say that it won't stay in tune. People make the mistake of blaming the tremolo on cheap budget guitars for keeping the guitar out of tune. It's true that the tremolo will show up the out of tuneness, but it's not the tremolo itself. It's the tuning instability is stored up in your nut slots if they're not correctly cut and they aren't lubricated properly, and consider that 50%, and the other 50% is in unreleased slack in your strings. And if you bring me a guitar and I can pull hard on the strings and they go out of tune, it's not because the tuners are turning backwards or anything slipping anywhere. People like to think it is. It's because your strings aren't fully stretched out. Even if you've had them on 2 years, it's still unreleased slack in the strings that I'll be stretching out. And if I can stretch that out and cause the guitar to go out of tune even slightly, then that will be happening while you're playing. Now these are quite worn here from before, so they have been leveled. I can see that, and it's typically where you often find the more leveling takes place, right on the edge, because the frets sometimes stick up. It's not bad actually. That's not good. So happy with that. Lovely. My hands have gone dirty. Yeah, it's mucky business. Mucky business. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to put that out of the way. Oh, I need to keep this handy because I need to put some new stuff on here, a different grit to take home to do the bass guitar. So now at this point I get to remove the strings and then we get to take the whole thing apart. So you can probably, oh blimey, still see. So there's kind of grime and rust on these tuners and things that I won't be able to fix, like I won't be able to fix the holes and dents on the body without refinishing the whole body, which obviously is not something we're going to do. But what I can do in the meantime is I will replace the bits I can replace, like the rusted screws that endanger it. Well, some of them have broken off or sheared. We may have to dig some out. That's the other problem, and that adds quite a lot of hassle time. But yeah, so it's not a beautification job. The aim is to make this play really well, and be fun to play. That's the objective. So I'm just going to get rid of all of these crappy things. It's a shame that the you can't upgrade. But it's a shame nobody makes a 50mm higher quality upgrade for the tremolo, because there is a 52. You could put a 52 one, but they are hard enough as it is to find in a bigger block style. You can get lots of cheap lightweight alloy 52 spaced bridges, but very few, if any, with a heavy block. So that's a bit of a pain. And if you do put a 52 on, even if you could find a heavy block to make it worthwhile changing it, the problem is you then put the strings quite near to the edge, uncomfortably close to the edge, which you don't really want to be doing. So I'm just going to try and remove these rusted screws right now and see what we've got. I really will. They're smaller, but I'll throw them all away. You can't get small screws like this anymore, which is totally annoying. I'm going to take this all apart. Whoops. So what I'll end up doing is when I put new screws on, I'll put larger modern screws on. These are right. So what happens is when people wear out the screw holes, they fit longer screws, which becomes a bit of a messy situation too. Right, that can come off, and I'll take this off the back here. So, out you come. Throw these screws away, lest anyone be tempted to use them again. So we have here the conventional Sun Mustang spacing, and that gives us opportunity for 2 single coils and a humbucker usually. I don't know if somebody scratched some initials in here. Now I don't believe this has been shielded, so I'm going to do it anyway. The other thing is, I don't know if you can see in there, but getting to the truss rod adjustment is impossible. You literally have to take the neck off, which is a right major pain in the what's it. But right now I've done my leveling, so I actually can afford to take this apart, and then we can do everything separately. So what I want to do with this is I'll take the bridge off and apart as well, even though there'll only be a certain amount of it that I can clean up, but we can certainly replace the corroded grub screws, and we can possibly, if I've got the right size ones, we can replace the corroded tremolo tremolo plate screws, 6 of them, provided they're the same size. There you go. So out comes our neck, lovely Indian January somewhere or other. Okay, so I think what we need to do is we'll take all of the bits out, so it's like a complete tear down, which I always enjoy. Nearly complete. Well, it will be complete. So out comes the bridge components. Do our springs, flip it over. Now we're going to try and get out these rusted screws. Fingers crossed. They're bent as well. Ew. So they're quite fine. They're not like your modern ones. They're not as fat, chunky as the modern ones. If we make them too tight, the bridge won't move at all. So they have to be subtle about it and respectful of the original components. But they are rusty. So and they're bent and slightly bent. So they will be making operation of the tremolo harder. Okay. So out comes the cheap block. Now the main thing about this is the block is perfectly fine. It's cheap, it's cheerful, but it's the only 50 millimeter spacing, so we have to make it work. So that means we need the block, we need the plate, and we need the saddles. We can get rid of these rusted bits. Now the first thing I'm going to do is going to go and fetch me some new, wherever I put them. Oh, how far here I am. I think these could be a bit too chunky. I've got a set of spare tremolo block screws. God, Gorilla Tape is something else. Right. Let's have a good close look. They are bigger. Question is, do they go smoothly through the holes or not? They're quite a bit bigger, behind me, they're miles bigger, but mind you, these have also rusted to hell. So do they go through? I would think they may just do. Do they move as much as they need to? Enough would be the word. Yeah. No, that's too tight. These need to rock backwards and forwards, so it needs some movement. Of course, the alternative is technically we could possibly enlarge the holes, but I'd be loath to do that. However, these 6 little things here are, they're usable, but they're pretty rusty. I wish I had some that size. I might go and have a dig around off camera. So what we definitely need to do, we'll put our body over here for a minute. I'll get rid of these because they aren't going to be any good in this go. We may have some tiny, smaller ones, but again, the smaller ones tend to come from these old 50mm bridges, of which you really can't find anymore. So what we're going to do is that I'm going to take out these grub screws now, and I think it'd probably make sense to throw them away, and I'll dig out some replacements. I've got some black short replacements. You notice I don't know if you've seen, but by the time I set that up, there's tons sticking out, so we don't even need, we need just the shortest ones to basically to set this up, finish it off. So it's struggling to come out. Oh, squeaky. I'm going to go and find the replacement ones. So again, not quick. I mean, if you ever get something completely stuck, you can of course soak these, take them off, and just chuck the whole lot in some penetrating fluid and leave it overnight somewhere. These aren't quite so bad yet, but they are a bit squeaky, like running fingers down a chalkboard type of thing. Funny enough, well, but not surprisingly, the top part of the grub screws are the corroded, the top and the bottoms where they stick out. The middle bit where it's hidden by the saddle itself, protected by the saddle, it tends to be fairly clean. I'm thinking to myself where some viable tremolo plate bolts might be, screws. The operation of the tremolo is very easily affected by those things, like the size of those screws. If you, the operation of the tremolo demands a certain amount of space between the top part, the unthreaded part up here. That's the bit that the thing pivots on. It demands a certain size, therefore clearance between that and the hole. So the hole has to be X amount bigger. And if it's too big, it's not going to work. And if it's too small, because I used too big a tremolo screw, like I just showed you, then it's not going to rock at all. So it has to be the right size. I don't instantly know what size that is. Technically, I could possibly over drill these holes if we absolutely had to, but those are still usable. But the problem they've got is that they're faced on there's on 3 of them at least, possibly 4 of them, they're quite corroded, so that the movement will not be very smooth. It's going to be metal on rust. Now, you know, it's a crude system, it's not an expensive tremolo and all of those things, but if you want it to stand a chance of going back into tune once you've used it, then, you know, anything like rust on any surface that's part of the tremolo, you just don't want. So I wouldn't guarantee this would work very well until we've been able to replace the screws or clean them out. I don't think we can clean them up because I think partly the corrosion has thinned them down a little bit as well. So theoretically, this one is really not wanting to come out. Theoretically, like I said, we probably could over drill these holes if we wanted to. Oh, but but I'll have a go look for some replacement. Blimey, now that was not good. So these are going in the bin because they are now crap. Well, they were crap and they are crap. I've got hundreds and thousands of them, different size, not different sizes, different lengths, so we'll dig out some good ones in a minute. So now we'll take this out, take each of these off, and clean all the bits up, and I'll re-thread grub screws onto here individually. Oh, by the way, just a little thing. When you have short and long screws in a setup like this, your long screw, if you're right-handed, your longer screws have to be on the side of the saddle that's going to be furthest forward, which is going to be the E. And if you have a short one, it needs to be in the G of this first three, and it needs to be on the low E of the second three. So that was slightly the wrong way around there. These are rusted as well, and I might be able to replace these with others, just so that they're not critical. Well, they might be if they get seized in place like this one. They're fairly easy to replace. Yikes, this one doesn't want to come undone. Right, grippers. Again, we've got to get this off. Otherwise, if we can't get it off, we can't use this. Thank you. Brilliant. Always happens on one. The spring's gone. If I can't locate it, oh, there it is. Unusually, I was able to find it straight away. Right. So what I'll also do, just to give it a good clean up, is take the plate off. Wasn't very tightly done up at all. Okay, so basically this whole thing in bits. Okay, so I'm not going to sort of show you all the cleaning bits on video. I'll do that off camera, but because I've got to get my hot water from the other room, wash my hands, clean up a bit. But what I will do, so my plan would be, let us, while we're on camera, let us re-radius the frets. Having leveled them, let's now just paint them over again with marker pen, and then I'm going to put a re-radiusing or a radiusing crowning file, that's what I'm looking for, to round off the flat spots I put on top of the frets just now, and then reshape them so that they are more like arch-shaped things instead of being flat topped, which they currently are. So these are jumbo frets, so I'm going to use the jumbo side of this StewMac file, and might take a fair bit of work here because these are also have been leveled before, so quite a bit of rounding off to do. That's fine, some more than others. And the aim is to leave as thin a line of marker pen along the top of the fret as possible, so that we know we've rounded it off, but we haven't lowered the fret anymore on its top. Now I can see some remnants of the groove damage here, which I'm not going to chase out. I'm going to leave it in, even though it would be nice if the leveling had got rid of it. But I don't think it's a worthwhile exchange, removing frets from all the other, metal from all the other frets around, because you want to get rid of the grooves, slight grooves in one fret. It's an expensive cosmetic procedure. So as a result, as I was saying before, I tend to consider removing low fret grooves, the wear grooves. I consider removing that as a sort of bonus of the leveling process, but not really a target in and of itself. certainly not one that's worth spending fret life on. So I kind of do it with I do the leveling, and then I hope that the leveling will help remove any wear grooves. And by the time I've sanded and polished that out, you won't see it or feel it. So even though I can see it here, according to the marker pen that's still caught in the slight depression where the grooves were. Anyway, so we're getting there. This fingerboard has been scraped with something, filed in some sort of way. I'm not quite sure why, but it's been filed in this direction. Somebody's done quite a lot of scraping. Maybe, I won't speculate. Don't know why, but it has. It also has a piece of damage up here, but again, it's not so bad that it will mess up the whole playability of it. It's always interesting trying to work out what's happened to something in the past. So the flatness of these frets at the moment, the relative amount of crowning work I'm having to do, this is much flatter than what I just did to it earlier on. So this is when you really get to perceive how much flattening or leveling had been done in the past. So I would say, without a doubt, this has been leveled before, which has accounted for the flatness of some of the frets, which is a good thing. It means that it's been more playable for its previous owner than it might otherwise have been. I had an interesting, sad, bittersweet, interesting thing happen yesterday. I was over at my parents in town, and I got a text while I was over there, and I couldn't see who it was from to begin with, but the text contained a photograph of a guitar that I sort of recognised, and it was a guitar, a Gould Les Paul copy in a sort of deep wine red sunbursty, very classic sort of looking thing, and I remembered it, and it was from a lady who said, I don't know if you remember, but my dad bought this guitar off you a few years ago, and he's passed away, and they were just wondering, if the guitar had any value, and what it was worth, if anything. And so it was kind of, I don't know, it was a very strange thing, really, to know that a customer has gone, and that the guitar that he loved so much. And I look back in my old records, because it was actually very early on when I started doing this, and it was at the time when I was numbering the guitars I set up, because I had these little holographic number stickers. And by the way, the only reason I stopped was because the supplier messed up and sent me the wrong size, and then by the time I could get it sorted out, I lost track of the sequence, or there were too many out of sequence without numbers on them, and it just seemed pointless to carry on. And then the supplier also stopped communicating, and blah blah blah. Anyway, silly little thing, but it just stopped the numbering process. But I looked in my old records, because I knew it was from very early days, and I could see that it was reloved number 40, which was probably in the first year, well, certainly around about somewhere, I think 2015, something like that. And a chap called Ken, sorry, I can't remember now. But the girl's dad had bought it, and I remember that it looked very classy. It wasn't quite a rock and roll Les Paul. It was much more of a big band, jazz players, and I think we joked at the time that it would suit Sinatra's backing band. So I think we called it the Frank Sinatra of Les Pauls. But anyway, so it was a sort of a sad thing to go back and tell her. I mean, it's not worth very much, You know, it's a Gould, it's a budget brand, doesn't have a lot of kudos or cachet, as they say, in the world of Les Paul copies, but it was a pretty guitar and set up lovely. And what was sweet was that she told me she remembered her dad telling her about it and how excited he was to have found it. And she said he told me all about Morris, and we watched Morris and You in the shed, and I just thought it was very sweet to have that little connection. So I told her that Morris was still very well, but unfortunately, because I'd moved my workshop, he was no longer able to spend time in the workshop, which was a shame. But I sent his regards. And truth is, he doesn't spend time in the workshop now, but he's even more lovey-dovey at home than... Oh, Christ. I don't really expect your blades to fall apart on you, do you? Yeah, so he's even lovey-doveyer at home now because he insists on sleeping on me most nights, which is, I find very sweet. Okay, so I've just cut through the finish that this had covering it, and I'm going to see if it pulls up with the fret pulling pliers, if they even are here, and if they're not, I don't know where they are. Ew. That's not so good. They kind of normally live around here somewhere. Where did I have them last? What was I pulling up? Something. They're not hanging. They're not over here. Maybe they're hidden in here somewhere. Anyway, yes, so that was a strange little connection. And I sort of had an urge to offer to buy it back. I don't know why, I just felt like it needed to come home. But that was being unnecessarily sentimental. Found them. Anyway, I'm sure it will go to a good home, and whoever gets it will enjoy it. Okay, so this nut is the kind of nut that doesn't want to come out. So we have little option but to cut it out, and that requires a bit of slicing right down the middle of it. Takes a while to do. But it's the best way to get through. Actually, it gets quite difficult once you get down a certain thing. What you also can do is chop it with the old Dremel. That's another way, if you've got a steady hand, and if you're plugged in, which it is. Long since lost the damned thing that holds the chuck here. It's a piece that's somewhere in this workshop, but I have to conclude that it's gone up the Henry because it's nowhere else in sight. I've never found it this day in all my massive clear-ups, and I promise you there have been some big clear-ups. Not as many as there should have been, but... Okay. So you get a mixture of melting and cutting all in one go there. It's pretty horrible. And amazingly, it doesn't really do anything. Maybe some of it breaks off like that, and you can pull bits off, but it still hasn't got a mind to come out. But, oh damn, do you know what? The thing I forgot to do that I really wanted to do? was measure it, but I know it's 3.8, so maybe if I can get a chunk to come out. Let's just double check, but I've measured these little suckers before. Hello. Actually, it could be 4. Well, I'll go to 4 anyway. So yeah, it doesn't really do much. So we're still going to have to dig down. Whatever happened, it'll have been glued in pretty well. Do a little bit more cutting. It really does melt it, something good. Totally goose it up. Yes, so anyway, yes, so that was a weird little thing to happen. And sorry to hear that of her loss, but it just reminds us that none of us guitarists are here for that long. And I'm quite conscious sometimes that anything I do here will live on after me, which is kind of a weird thing to think that most, if not all, of my guitars will carry on playing when I'm not around. That is an odd thought, but not a bad one. I mean, it's no weirder than when you kind of stop and think, that people of my age are already gone. Never take tomorrow for granted, or today. So this is not really wanting to come out very easily, but you can see it eventually will with a bit of encouragement. A lot of glue went in there by the looks of it. Not quite sure what kind. It might even have been some sort of resin. But okay, so we've got a start point for replacing our nut, and we can use the nut file to flatten out the bottom. Unfortunately, the nut file, maybe fortunately then, doesn't do anything to the sides, so that if your sides aren't straight, you have to get all of that sorted and right before you get into trying to fit the next one. So getting the slot tweaked and adjusted is really vital, including, if you have to, chiseling the ends to make sure they're a vertical slot. That's close for now. Quite difficult to hand file a very flat slot. As simple as that. It's not very easy at all. So there's glue on the face of the slot as well, which we have to kind of scrape off without messing up the levelness. Okay, well, it's not perfect, but it's been rather heavily glued in the past. So the nut making part is going to take quite some time. Where's it gone? There it is. So here we have, I don't think I've got any other chunks, no. It just so happens that one of these will only make one of those, despite everything else. So if you get it wrong, you need to get another one of these, which is a pain. So we've got to get it down to 4 millimeters deep wide and 40 across as a start point. So this is going to be a long-winded pile of things. So I'm I'm going to go off camera, have a drink, and I'll come back when I'm starting to do interesting things. So we've re-thingied the, whatever the word is, polished the, no, re-crowned the frets. I'm just wondering, by the way, I was thinking whether there's any way of cleaning this or evening out these scratches or strange scratches just by a bit of judicious scraping here, because it's got a horrible feel of horizontal gouging going on in there. So I think we could probably just ease that off a bit. It's partly gets rid of the old DNA as well, so yeah, I'll do that with all of them too. It will look cleaner to begin with. Get rid of that. It's a bit like it's been scalloped. Anyway, right, so long-winded nut making. I'm going to use a variety of things. I'm going to use a bandsaw, I'm going to use sanding blocks, etc, etc. While I'm at it, let's get rid of this rusted to hell string tree. You were going straight in the bin, my little friend. You're not even any good as a ground terminal inside of the body cavity. There's no real point taking these off because there's nothing we can do with them. I might be able to change out the rusted tuner screws, having said that, because they are pretty manky. Right. So after that, let's see, they're so basic. They just fall apart at the first opportunity. Yeah, so what I'll probably do is let's see, I will go off, do this nut, then I will paint the cavity off camera. I will polish out the frets as well, scrape the neck. I will come back to you on camera for the electrics, and then for the putting it together again. Yeah. So the nice thing about doing fret leveling is that this method means that I know that when I put the guitar back together again and put new strings on and put it under load, I know that because it was leveled and played perfectly at the action that I set before, I just know that if I now reset that action again, the guitar will be capable of playing at that action because we've already done it at that action. It's not like we took all the strings off, took the neck off, put it flat, did a fret leveling, then put it back together again, then tried it out. I already know that it plays at the chosen action, so it's going to be dead easy just to put it back. Now I just wonder, while I'm at it, can I remove these ferrules? It's gone in instead of knocked the ferrule out. If they don't want to come out, then they can stay. No, it doesn't want to come out. In fact, it just wants to grab the hex key, which I don't want it to do. Okay, that's too tight. I'm not going to mess with that. Right, nut making. See you in a bit. So here we are. Look, a little bit of soldering done over there. Well, not a little bit. I rewired, and I cheated and didn't show you it because I was listening to something and I didn't want to stop. So I've jumped ahead. Here we have the frets polished, leveled and polished out, fingerboard scraped, cavity, conductive paint shielded, grounded, pots changed, switch changed. You'll notice the Indian Sun Mustang original switch was too small, so any replacement switch is bigger. So this is what I tend to do. I extend it to the right size, and that just becomes part of the switch. It's a quirk, but that's the only way you can do it, because they don't make the switches that small anymore. And if we're going to replace the electronics, then we need to go ahead and replace the switch as well. There's kind of no point only stopping halfway. Right, so we're going to go with 10s. I'll just double check this, but I'm pretty sure we're 10s for this. Remember, I've got a little bit to do still on the nut. That's going to be a very careful thing. Isn't it funny how I didn't write that down? Oh, it came with 9s, didn't it? So that was what it was. Do you remember? 9s. So let's put 9s on's. Okay, I'm going to set the tremolo in down only mode at some point in the not too distant future. So yeah, the first bit is going to be a matter of doing the nut. Now, this is a very, very precise operation, and I think I'm going to need to sacrifice a set of strings for this. I'll keep you just on there. I've got tons of sacrificial strings, so I can afford to do it, and thanks to Simon's superb sacrificial strings symposiums, I will use some of those for this go, and then we'll dump them straight away afterwards. So let's just get a little blade. So yeah, all of the main stuff's done, and of course the main setup part is done in the fret leveling. I polished this out as much as it will go, but it's not in the greatest condition body wise, as you know. Pairs, eh? First and fourth, okay. Third and sixth. It's like that, is it? Sixth and third. Look, but not bad quality looking strings. Sorry about this. Just gonna have you tie you up a minute. Why is this struggling to go through? Thank you. Third and sixth. Yes, so I got hooked into one of those bloody American police interrogation things. I find them really interesting, and this one was a Chinese young man who moved to, it's not American, it's Canadian thing. He moved to Vancouver or somewhere like that, and from Hong Kong, and ended up murdering 2 people. And just listening to him for hours on end, not denying, but refusing to accept what he'd done. And the lady detective takes him step by step, or introduces a little bit more evidence every hour or so, and eventually it's just utterly damning. You know, here's you on video, here's you buying the murder weapon, here's you, here's your DNA under the nails of the deceased woman. And just a fascinating thing about watching somebody coming to terms with it, but still unable to admit their guilt. Like they're holding out for some shame thing or something. I don't quite know what really, but it is quite astonishing to see. Okay, so let's just check. We're back in Nutsville. So I'm going to need to put on all of these strings, and then we're going to do the nut from there. Now I'm just conscious about the position of this low E for a second, because it's currently quite close to the edge. That's mainly because the thing's currently high, so we're going to have to lower the slot and bring it inwards and downwards, but let's get them on first. Yeah, so the whole process of cutting a Tusq custom nut is quite difficult. So I think what what I'm going to look at is if this is immediately too far off, then I'm going to consider scrapping these slots right off the bat and redo them, but take the nut down lower. See, we're really tall at the moment, so there's room to cut down some more, and that erases the original marks, and we can go again and do it again. So it's good to have sacrificial strings, and it's good to put them on the right tuner post as well. I haven't yet oiled the fingerboard, so that's got that to do as well before we put the proper strings on. Yes, so I'm afraid I was so hooked by this particular case, I couldn't bring myself to stop watching it. So you must forgive me. It's also sometimes run out of things to talk about and say, and it's very slow. Wiring process is very slow. I don't have a lot of fabulous bits of wisdom to impart while I'm doing it, so I kind of try and stay off sometimes. So let's have a look and see where. First of all, we'll look at the alignment down the neck as well as the nut spacing. The spacing's good, it's just whether it's got enough room to do it. Yeah, I got a feeling we might need to cut a tighter pattern than that, which I thought I had done. Maybe I didn't. No, I think I didn't. Okay, I'm going to make an executive decision. First thing I'm going to do is cut off all those extra bits, which are very annoying. Don't look bad quality strings, these. One of these days I'm actually going to play a set of these, and it doesn't mean all cheap strings are crap. A lot of them have been, and I've used them primarily as sacrificial strings, but they aren't guaranteed to be crap. Okay, so I've got enough room here to just take down these slots, and I'm going to remark them again, for which I'm going to need my sharp pencil. Cut sharp as well. Damn it. Need a really sharp blade, which I am struggling with. That will do. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to sand this down right now. Ooh, let's hold that there instead. Right, if I had my time again, I wouldn't have cut these quite as deep as I did, but we've got enough room to remove them and reposition them. Yeah, it was a great moment in this interrogation, where the policewoman, the detective says, "Do you know how we got your DNA?" And he didn't know, and he said, "Do you remember?" She said, "Do you remember 2 weeks ago you were in such and such supermarket? Do you remember there was that nice lady with a bad hand, and she couldn't open the thing of squash or whatever it was, and somehow, I don't quite know how they did it, but they got him to do it with his teeth, I think, but in doing so he put his DNA all over it, understandably, and they got him on that. Poor fella, you could sort of see he had no idea that that had happened or that they were behind that. I don't know why I'm saying poor fellow, he killed 2 people, but it's poor only insofar as watching an animal kind of in captivity with no chance of escape. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to, this will be, even if we're bottomed out here, we'll still be tall. Yeah, loads of height. So I think it's probably better that I continue and just get rid of the last little mark so I can start again. Yes, I'm sort of, I had to stop now because I had to show this last bit of the job. But I'm thinking, oh, is he going to actually admit it, or is it just going to be that scene where they put him in the crinkly jumpsuit and walk him out to county or wherever they take them? I've got a feeling it's going to be that. Right, so I'm going to use my fabulous ruler, and I should have done this before, but there's a marking on here for the encore strat setting, which is of course the blasted one that I use. I mean, it's the same guitar basically, so if I start and space that equally, the first one will be about, if I can get this, it's so hard to use a pencil at this angle. There. So if I line that up with there, like so, again it's really difficult. It's difficult to see, it's difficult to hold it in place. There we go. Tidy. Now, I say tidy, but the next bit is bleeding hard, and that's the bit that actually makes the mark. So I'm going to start with making a 10 sized mark to just, and I don't have any light on this side, that's really annoying. I don't have spare light. Will that one reach? Probably not. The white thing, very light thing. No, damn. So of all the things I can't do is shed some light on it. Let's try and see if I can use a tiny fraction of the lighting here. Well, that's a bit crappy. Maybe it's a bit of a chance. 10 on this side. So always the difficult bit is making that first mark and getting it on the line. I go until it just obscures the line, and then that's my mark. Oops, it's gone back one. Okay, so there's my initial marks, just to get the strings biting. And then it's a case of taking it down from there. So what's the way? That one looks a fraction off mark. Damn it. Let's just get this out of the way. Go away. Phones can be really annoying to operate. Okay, so we're hitting the deck down there a minute, so let's get that taken care of. How did that work out? That's about right there. That's weird. That's very weird. So even with a precise thing, even that is hard to get right. So I'm going to just flatten or curve roll this one out for a minute and then reconsider the position. Same with this one. So just taking it down with a round one gives me a chance to put it where it should be, which is a little tiny bit to the left. So, as you can see, a really challenging little thing to get right, nowhere near as easy as you would think. So the spacing is going to be right there to one side. How you ever actually mark this up now, I don't know. You try and do a line either side of that line. Well, still looks wrong. Try it there. That's good. Happy with that. Now this one is a fraction too far that way, so I've got to bring that one back in. So even when you line up the things with a guide, getting that first mark can be really difficult. Okay, so here's the position. As long as we just get the first mark, we should be all right. Spacing's good. Right. Now I'm going to raise up things at this end because we are a bit low at this end. So these are going to be fairly well dialed in because we chose to have ultra short ones so that they aren't sticking into the hands, but they do they will rise up enough, even though they're sat quite deeply in the body of the saddle. It's enough to get this playing. So I'll put them all approximately in the right place for the time being. And then we will make minor adjustments slightly later. Okay, so the alignment is good now. I've cured that down the centre. Now the height is fine. I think this is a weird thing to say, but I'm going to revert to a familiar technology for this nut. It's crazy, I've got these Hosco files, but actually I don't trust them, bizarrely. So I'm going to go with the V file that I know and trust. And what that means is I'm going to use it to get to the height I want for the slot, and then I'm going to come back over it and remove any excess. So we want to have the thingy guides. What on earth is that? Is that 30? No, it's a 60. There's a 30. Thank you. So I'll just double tweak my action down here for a minute, and then we'll come back to the slots. So we want 1.2 on this one. High 1.5. Okay. We've got 1.2, 1 point, a bit more. So that's about right. And we have of 1.5 nearly. It's probably a fraction too high. And then 1.2, a bit more. Yep. And the final one, 1.2. Just over 1.5, so down a fraction. Right. Okay, so now I can, I think what I'll do is also put it in roughly in tune. Only roughly. So I'm going to work out from the G outwards to get to the ideal height. Now I could use, I get really nervous, these are the business, this is what you're supposed to use, but I get nervous that 17, it cuts a nice slot, but it does it really frighteningly quickly. So I've got caught out by this a few times. See if I can do it as intended, but without the unexpected surprise. Okay, around about there, I'll come back. So that was 17, now we want 13. Okay, now we do the thinnest one of all, number 10, and we're a little far off, but not too far. Ten. We'll stop there for a minute, and we'll come back over this side, and we will use the, what are we on, 36, 46, 26. Here we go, 26. Okay, let's stop there. A bit more tweaking to do, but I'm sort of playing it safe to begin with. 26, 36. 36, downwards. Hold off for a minute. And we are on the 46. Difficult to reach in some ways because you've got the peg in the way. But this end is workable. Although it looks a bit thicker, I don't think it is. I think it's just an illusion. A slightly scary one, I have to say. So what I'll do is, once I've got the right height, I'll I'll go back and file off any excess material because we don't need anything more than we actually need, if you see what I mean. So I'm going back all over the over all the 6 again. So we're starting with so 17, that's the G, very close. I think I'll just stop there. 17, 13, 13 downwards, 13 downwards, just about there, and on the top we have 10. Very close as it is. I think I might just leave it as it is. Then the final 3 again from the other side, so we go 26, 36 and 46. Stop there. 26, 36, 36. Ow. Nearly there. 36. Just see how quickly that goes down. That's what worries me about these. They've got no leeway at all. But they do cut the right shape. That's the sort of primary thing about them. Pull these a bit. Quick tune. Just a quick check on the relief. That's a little bit. I did a tiny adjustment. Ooh. Very low and very light. Okay, I'm going to stop there. So, next thing to do, final thing to do really. Oh, I'll tell you what, let's do the, while I'm at it, I'm going to do the intonation with it's with these strings, so it will change a bit, but let's set it first if we can with the this one. Pardon me. Let's see what we can do. Boink. Zoom out, maybe. Something like that. Thank you. Let's just have a look, see where it falls. Let's do a final check on the actions. Very low. I think I'm just going to be a bit more realistic about these. Pardon me. So let's get 1.2, 1.3, 1.4, blimey, lower, 1.5, we want 1.5, less than 1 millimeter. That's incredibly low. I'll get it right. One point five, 1.4, 1.4, 1.5. Just about there. Right. Obviously slightly out of tune. Oh, I don't need the tuning fork. Oops. Let us try quick sound check, and then we'll be, oh well, we won't be done because we'll have to put in some, we'll put some oil and some new strings on, but we'll be nearly done. Let's have a listen. So this is the original Sun Mustang pickups, new pots, new switch, new nut, new strings, new jack socket, and yes, so new electrics all round basically. So let's have a, I'll see if I can find a cream coloured tip to this switch because it will look so much better. What reverbs have we got? Okay, tested. This room is not great acoustically for my ears. It makes my ears ring after not a very long time of playing. It could be something I've done damage to my ears at some point. So I just answered an ad in the Cornwall Music and Papers type of thing for a rhythm guitar player. And I foolishly answered it saying, all right then, I'm interested. Which, if they are interested in having me come along and play, then I might suddenly go and find out that I'm unable to because my ears won't work. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to undo the tremolo claw screws at the back to reduce the amount of sprung load on the tremolo, so we can have it so that it will stay put most of the time. Sorry about the view if it's not very good. We want it to stay flat so that when you press your hand on it, it doesn't detune, but we want to be able to sort of down tremolo it with the least bit of slightest movement. Of course, these damn arms always rattle. There's no way around that, unfortunately. I don't know if I've got a spare one that sticks up in the right angle or anything. Let's see. They're pretty standard, these. Let's see if this one comes anywhere close. Oh, there we go. Okay. Yep, we want that sitting there. Brilliant, that's fine. So it doesn't move at all when we put our hands back on there. Right, pretty much almost there. Now we're going to put some real strings on. When I take this off, I'm going to just file the nut back a little bit more. Now we've got the right depths. And then just tidy it up. So these sacrificial strings now can go in as a bin. Yeah, it'd be horrible to have actually discover that I've damaged my ears, because if I have, I know where I did it, and it would have been in the last band I was in, thanks to the drummer and his screaming cymbals of madness. He used to really mash those cymbals, and they would end up hurting. Well, it was like a white hot steel being poured into your ears in a furnace, something like that. So I've got a feeling that might have done me in, but we shall see. Right, so my plan for this moment is to put some oil on here now. Oh no, first of all, let's do the remainder of the shaping. Just take this down as low as it needs to be. There's no point in having any excess material sticking up above the slots. Never gets all of it out. Come on. Would you come along? Little scrapings of Tusq sticking out there. Right. Okay, and then what I would do is just smooth it off with the 240 grit. And just make sure that the edges were rounded. Okay, I actually got a little bit too much at this end, I would say. So let's take a bit extra down here. Good. Right, next some oil for the fretboard, then the Ernie balls this, and then we're ready. How did that happen? Did I just squirt my hand with oil? So the rosewood on these things goes a very different colour when you put oil on it, as you can see there, from light red to dark red. Over time they do pick up loads of finger grease, and they do turn a lovely colour. We lost a bit of that dark colour in cleaning up the stripes that were gouged into here, but I kind of think it's probably nicer to have a smoother fingerboard, which is a bit redder than a dark one that has strange carvings in it. Right, and then we'll just go over the top here. Okay. Wow, that's just lovely colour by comparison. Okay, so now I'm going to load up. So we'll load up. I've done the intonation, and what we'll just need to do is stretch out the strings. Now that's the key to tuning stability, and you probably may well have heard that from my rabbitings on my various videos, but that's where the tuning stability really lives. So remember what I said, 50% is the nut slots. They need to be Tusq ideally, and allowing your strings to move freely without any pinch or friction. That's 50% of your tuning stability equation, and the other 50% is the stretching out the slack in your new strings. And like I mentioned earlier on, this is anything but as simple as people think. You really have to put effort into it, and it rewards you with great string stability when you've done it. And so I don't recommend you sort of just do a little bit and then hope, because if you're going to play, there's nothing as nice as a guitar that stays in tune. So hopefully if you put your effort into getting the strings fully stretched out, you'll really reap the benefits of it. So I'm just going to line these all up first. Fortunately these are still rusty, because short of changing out the tuners, there's nothing really to do to fix those. It's a bit old and had it. I mean, they function perfectly well, but you know, they are showing their age. So over the held string on the first time round, push it down, pull up the, over the loose string, pull up the loose string second time round, and hold the held string under the loose string, so it kind of makes a little locking thing. I'll do it again. So push the string all the way through to begin with. Make sure you've even got it in the right place. Make sure the ball is right up inside the block. Hold it on the first fret, pull it back a fret's worth, hold tight, direct the held string above the loose string first time, and then as it comes around, push the held string down, pull the loose string up, and direct the held string under the loose string, which makes a little lock, and then cut off the excess. So it's a nice simple tuning up thing, string winding thing with very little excess material on it. Pull back, start winding, hold tight, hold it over the loose one, push it down, under the loose one, pull the loose one up for ease of chopping, and so on and so forth. So this is basically the most you can do to a Sun Mustang without worrying about the spacing which the 50mm bridge imposes on you, the spacing constraints. And as I said earlier on, the whole guitar is built around this bridge, so they've decided they're going to make a narrow scale guitar, slightly narrow scale. So the bridge is 2.5mm narrower E to E than just about any modern bridge you care to mention. And as a result, then so is the neck heel. is in line with that narrow bridge, and then so are the nut slots and so on. So everything is kind of custom built for this scale guitar, which made it kind of original and its own thing, but it does create some issues. So if you're going to fix it up, I would say the best thing to do is keep the original bridge, restore it as much as you can, as I did with new grub screws, greased everything so everything's not going to rust anymore, and then basically concentrate on the playability of the neck and the nut, and then you've got a very good, you've got the guitar as good as it will be. And in fact, it's almost always better than it was when it came out of the factory, that's for sure. So I'm just going to give these a bit of a tug to get them seated. Whoop, I can feel that one. Hello. I think that's creaking on the bits of rust somewhere. Okay, so the first thing I'll do is get an A, and tune up a fraction. So that's the first bit done. Then I would recommend that you take each of the strings between thumb and forefinger and push hard to stretch out the slack that lives therein, and go from string to string and so on and so on. And then also across into the bit behind the nut if you can as well. Stretch them out good and proper. And we're just basically, oops, you want to keep on doing this until there's bits of fluff coming out. Keep on doing this until it doesn't detune any further. So you can stretch it, but it won't detune. Of course, you've got to be a little bit delicate with the high E, because that's liable to break if you pull it around too hard. Oops. And again, so go over each string again. And you could do it 3, 4 or even 5 times to get all the slack out. Sometimes it takes that long. Like I said right at the beginning, if you don't do it, it'll miraculously come out when you don't want it to, when you're playing, and when you maybe when you're using the tremolo, or when you've played a lead guitar lick in the middle of a song or something, when you least want it to, and it will be detuned for you. So the lower wound strings will detune longer than the plain strings will. See how well that stays in tune? There you go. There we have it. The Sun Mustang re-thingied, brought back from obsolescence. Obviously, the I might tie this in a little bit. Yeah, brought back from the dead. Pickup heights obviously are a personal matter, so I would recommend they get adjusted. This, interestingly, this has a little bit of non-return to put to action. It's a tiny bit off, and I can't tell you what, if anything, is causing that. So all I can do is loosen these. It may be a tiny bit of the rust on these, on the shafts of these deer. Maybe something's touching something, but I can't really see what. Actually, the springs are touching, but that's only when it's fully extended. They kind of they crunch as they go over the edge there, but it is not perfect. But that's the only downside of it. See how far out it is. Well, what it does, it goes back to the same place each time. But if you pull it back, it will stay back a little bit, courtesy of whatever grind it's got on those rusty things. Yeah, just be aware of that. It's not quite returning back to flat, and that is probably because it's a little bit gritty down the front there. It's a shame, really, but that's probably the slight consequence of having rusty shafts of the screws. I'll just try pulling it out a little bit to see if we can get to any cleaner bits of the screw shafts. Would be nice. Maybe. Oh yeah, it's going back. Maybe we have to go in that little bit more pressure. It's a shame. That's the sort of price we have to pay. I think that's about right there. About a 1/10 of a millimeter's discrepancy where it settles back if you pull it back. I think that will do. yeah. There's that last little bit, it'll stick on. You can feel it. There's a little bit of grunge on the heads of the thing scraping. I put some grease on there. I mean, it might be you could scrape it off and clean it up. It seems to be actually operating a bit more freely now. You never know, but it might be that that just helps it along. Oops. It's almost there. Anyway, just fine-tuning it. So thank you for watching. There goes the Sun Mustang. It's going in the bag. It's going back home, and it's going to back to Robert. Whew. Sun Mustang. Oh, one thing I didn't check, whether there's a spare plate knocking about around here, white plate that would do for the Sun Mustang. God, there's millions of things. Here's a plate, here's a white one. Where do they all live? God, I've got brass around there, tons of brass. Don't know, this might be, for all I know, this might be an original Sun Mustang one. It'll be equally spaced if it is. Oh, look at this. I actually think this is an original. No, can't be. No, it's not. It's making a monkey out of me. It's nearly there. No. All right. Well, I thought I might, but what I will do is let's just look for that. See, we don't have a cream tip on there either, which is a shame. Nor does the original one, which I'll send back with it. Let's see. Where would they live? Tips. Let's look in the box of goodness. Tips, screws, trim screws, switch tips. Switch tips, could be. Oops. Any luck? Wrong one. Maybe. Yeah, that'll do. Whee! Better colour. Now the only thing in the way is the white of the tremolo arm. Okay, thanks for watching. See you soon.